Yet again, the Pittsburgh Steelers in the clutch come up with a big win to keep their playoff hopes alive. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're going to break down everything from the 16-13 win over the Baltimore Ravens and how the Steelers can still make the playoffs right here on a Victory Monday episode of Locked On Steelers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and especially on YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button in the video if you enjoyed. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you've ever dreamed about being an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise, then this is the game for you. Download the game by visiting ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores on your mobile device. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise with using the promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, all caps, all one word, in the game at Ultimate Football GM. Steelers fans, oh my goodness, this was wild. First of all, shout out for another Victory Monday podcast episode. This was ridiculous. The Steelers, at one point in this game, down by 10 in the second half. The way that they're playing, you think they're not going to be able to bring it back. They settle for 2 field goals, and you're thinking, why are they settling for field goals, including one in the fourth quarter? And then, just like last week against the Raiders, they get the ball late in the fourth quarter. They had about 4 minutes and 16 seconds with the ball, and they go 80 yards downfield, 5 first downs. Kenny Pickett, some of the best throws I've seen him make in his professional career yet. The pass over the middle he had to Steven Sims, absolutely clutch. And then the touchdown pass where he breaks free of contain, getting chased, throws on the run, and hits Najee Harris falling away into the end zone. What a spectacular finish from these guys, a group, the Pittsburgh Steelers, that have not given up on this season, that continue to fight, and these are the wins. This is why you don't tank. You're growing. You're seeing these players coming together, learning how to win in the tough moments when not everything's stacking on your side. The Steelers still don't have the best offensive line. This is not the team that you are eventually going to want to compete in the Super Bowl with. This is a team that you knew it was a rebuilding year. Yet in a rebuilding year, they're making key wins on big stages late in the year to keep things alive. The offense, sure, didn't score a touchdown until the very end of the game, but man, the way that they did it was spectacular. And I got to say, the things that they did do right, Najee Harris, this was his best game as a pro. I think that he's had 22 carries, 111 yards, all coming against the third best ranked rushing defense in the NFL that kicked the Steelers' butts just a few weeks ago in the trenches. Shout out to the Steelers' offensive line. They did an amazing job as well. Jaylen Warren runs extremely hard, 12 carries, 76 yards, including a 31-yard jet sweep that got him a big chunk of those yards, but still, huge day from the rushing offense for the Steelers. And I do feel like they should have called more play action. I do feel like they should have given themselves more chances to make plays downfield. But at the end of the day, your guys stick to your plan. They execute. And in the big moments, you come to win. This was what Mike Tomlin talked about when he was talking about getting a guy like Kenny Pickett, the leadership, the being able to stay focused in the big moments, not letting the moments get too big for him. This is why they went and got him. This is what I told you that I saw when he was at the University of Pittsburgh, and I was covering him there for his last 2 seasons with the Pitt Panthers, that he brought to the table. While everyone else is worrying about this or freaking out over here and there, Kenny Pickett's in the same spot as always, focused on winning, focusing on the next play, the next game, being better, being there for his teammates and being a leader in the moment and carrying himself with confidence. And in this game, he certainly did to the very end. The Steelers could have panicked so many times in this game. When Cam Heyward got called for the penalty, that I thought was a terrible flag by the officials. Cam Heyward literally has his hands up and is pulled to the ground and flagged for being pulled to the ground. And then, and the Steelers give up a touchdown the very next play, and you see Minkah Fitzpatrick kind of bark at Cam a little bit there in frustration, and they're being some turmoil on the sidelines. They put all that behind them. We'll get to the defense in a bit because they had a phenomenal day as well once they were able to clean things up. But to keep your composure out throughout the whole game, the offense stalling time after time on drives and not being able to finish, but then staying focused, executing, and getting the touchdown at the end. These are the moments, these are the things that are the building blocks of building young players to build forward to, and building those clutch moments that the Pittsburgh Steelers have. I want to point this out. Kenny Pickett, by my count, he had a game-winning drive against the New Orleans Saints, had a game-winning drive and a fourth-quarter comeback against the Indianapolis Colts, had a game-winning drive and a fourth-quarter comeback against the Las Vegas Raiders, and now a game-winning drive with a fourth-quarter comeback against the Baltimore Ravens. That's 4 in his rookie season. That's remarkable. If you go back, I think there's only maybe 4 or 5 seasons in Ben Roethlisberger's career when he's had 4 or more. I have to pull that up, and we'll put that more into our Tuesday episode here on the Locked On Steelers podcast when we do our grades. But bottom line is that him and the young offensive leaders that they are putting together, they're growing together, and especially him and Najee Harris. Najee Harris put the team on his back in this game. And if you were one of the people that called him Trent Richardson, that called him a bust and said that, this, that, and the third, you look like a clown right now because he's out there balling right now. And again, that wasn't some bums. That wasn't the Chicago Bears. That wasn't a 3-12 team with nothing to play for. This was a Ravens team that if they win this game, they go into next week with a very good chance to try to clinch the AFC North and earn a home game in the playoff. This is a playoff football team. And yes, sure, Lamar Jackson didn't play. But you know what? They still had their defense out there. They still had a lot of components, and the Steelers still found a way to win. And there were plenty of times Najee Harris was running the football, and when he got the yards, you saw him even talking back at the Ravens because they were trying to be physical. He was being physical right back, and that energized the Steelers. The Steelers were able to feed off of that, and other guys felt that. I think that the Steelers, like I said for a while, the 1-2 punch of Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren is going to be a serious threat for this offense for years to come. And I think it continues to develop in a special way that won't force all of the pressure on Kenny Pickett in his developmental years in the NFL, because we're seeing him develop right now. He still has a long way to go before he's the eventual completed version of himself that he will be in the NFL. But while he's getting there, you need a strong run game to get there. And you're seeing this was a clutch game for the run game to come through. And yes, the Ravens were missing Calais Campbell. Total thing to note, absolutely. But this is still a team with Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, a lot of players on that defensive front to give you a lot of problems. And the Steelers still found a way to win out in this game. A big shout out to the Steelers offensive line. They had their moments where Chukuma Corfer was getting whipped, Mason Cole got whipped, but still they were coming together, winning enough matchups to say, hey, Najee Harris, go out and get the big play. And then again, in the end, for Kenny Pickett to find a way to win at the end of the game with another clutch touchdown pass, just like he did against the Raiders. Spectacular. And again, not pretty. This wasn't a pretty win. The offense didn't dominate the entire game, but the bottom line is they found a way to win. And when you're not a very good team, in a year, and this is a rebuilding year, you finding ways to win are the building blocks of when you are in position, when you do have the things on your side, when you do have the assets and you are the better team on the field more weeks than not. You're going to have a lot more of those times to lean on and say, hey, we've pulled this out before with less going for us. So when the Steelers go and get their big bad offensive lineman, when Kenny Pickett's a more developed quarterback and is more used to the system and the pace of NFL play, when Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren have gotten more in sync with offensive line, it's been more invested into, and Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and if Calvin Austin can get healthy next year, with Pat Freiermuth and all that starts to click, this offense will be so much better off having fought through these moments and knowing what it means to win, not just games right out, but also late games in the season, late in the year, staying focused week to week. This is the kind of stuff that builds future champions for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Huge day for the offense, huge finish for the offense, and I think a huge momentous win for the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers as they are now 8-8. We're going to get to those Steelers playoff hopes in a little bit here, but I also got to talk about the defense before we get there, because to me, this was also a huge statement for the defense to bounce back in the way they did in the second half of this game. We'll talk about all of that here in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about one of our great sponsors, and that's Ultimate Football GM. If you've ever been dreaming about being an NFL GM, this is your chance, because with Ultimate Football GM, you can play this game right on your phone and manage your own football franchise. You can manage every strategic aspect of your team. You can name your team, put the colors of your team. Then you can play through your seasons, lead your team to glory. You can hire the right coaches, the right players, make free agency moves, trade players, make the right draft picks, build the right scouting offense to help you find the right draft picks, navigate your franchise, and you'll play through all the different seasons and all the different ups and downs, players getting into trouble and deciding how to manage that. It's such a fun game that has so many realistic elements to it, and it's completely free, playable offline. You can play on the go wherever you're going. I played this game and the seasons flew by fast. I knocked out a season sometimes in as fast as 3 minutes with how quickly you can sim through once you have your team set up the way you want. Played 25 seasons, won 19 championships. Think you can do better? Go to Ultimate Football GM and prove me wrong. And Locked On Steelers listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when you download the game, go to the game store, and put in the code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, and you'll get a 100% boost to all the factors that help you build your franchise. And to download the game, just go to ultimate-gm.com or go on your mobile device, look it up in your app store, and look up Ultimate Football GM. Or again, go to ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your franchise today. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We got to talk about the defense in this one, because there were certainly frustrating moments early on where, J.K. Dobbins still ran for 5.5 yards per carry, 17 carries, 93 yards. Gus Edwards was shut down. But I really felt like some of the moments came just on unfortunate spots for the Steelers. The one touchdown drive the Ravens gave up, there were multiple holes, and there were a lot of people, and I thought Steelers Twitter did a good job of this. There were a lot of people tweeting really obvious still frames of when, just key players like Alex Highsmith or players who were at the hole ready to make the tackle, and just having Ravens players reach from around them, grab their, just pulling them backwards. Just obvious should be called holding penalties in key spots and key runs that got the Ravens key first downs, and they weren't called. But the Steelers staying focused, and then on the touchdown drive, the Steelers get the stop. Looks like they're going to force a field goal. Cam Heyward called for unsportsmanlike conduct, because he was on top of a pile trying to get off of it, and a Ravens player pulled him down while his hands were up, and because he bumped an official while being pulled down by a Ravens player, he was flagged. A rough situation for the Steelers. They give up a touchdown right after, and if you saw the replays, you saw Minkah Fitzpatrick and Cam kind of get into it a little bit on the sideline, but they put all that beside them. They found a way in the second half to respond really tough. The Steelers do give up opening drive, goes down the field, the Ravens get a field goal, and at that point, you're sitting there and you're thinking, man, they're up 13-3, third quarter. The Steelers offense hasn't been doing much. This is a lot to ask for. But the Steelers defense, just like they did against the Raiders, stood tall, kept giving the offense chances. After that field goal, they allowed one first down on the next drive, then 3 and out of them. Then after that, another 3 and out, -2 yards. After that, another 3 and out. And I gotta say, the 3 and out where they got -2 yards was as clutch as you could be, because that was right after another long kick return the Steelers gave up that gave a team really good field position. If the Ravens get a first down or get even just a few more yards on that drive, it gives them a chance to get in Justin Tucker's field goal range. They make another field goal, and then you're still down 10 because the Steelers had scored a field goal at that point. But you're putting yourself even more of a position. Maybe the Steelers are tied going to overtime at the end of this game, but they don't yield points there. They get another 3 and out later to give the Steelers a chance, the Steelers offense, another last chance at the end to get the play. And I got to say, the Steelers defense, they didn't do everything perfect, but they were physical at the point of attack so many times this game. Robert Spillane, another game leading the Steelers with tackles. He really stepped up these last few weeks against teams the Steelers knew wanted to run the football. We talked about how the Raiders wanted to run it with Josh Jacobs. You knew with a backup quarterback, the Ravens wanted to hand it to J.K. Dobbins and let him rule the day. 9 tackles for Robert Spillane, but also Minkah Fitzpatrick, 9 tackles for him as well, and the game-clinching interception, which live, when I was watching from Channel 11 Studios. That's why I'm still dressed in the suit, because I just got done with their post-game shows and sped back here to put on a full show for you guys. But when I saw it live, I thought Minkah Fitzpatrick was just standing there, and it was just like, oh, that's just a terrible throw from Tyler Huntley. But when I looked at the end zone view that they showed after the play, I did see a receiver coming on a crossing pattern and with a step on his man, that if Huntley gets the ball a little further down the field, it's a catch, and the Ravens are probably in field goal range. But Minkah Fitzpatrick reads his eyes, says, even if you throw it a little bit further, you're going to get intercepted. He finishes the game with an interception, just like he did against the Falcons a few weeks ago for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's had 6 interceptions on the year. What a year for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Also, the emergence of Mark Robinson. The Steelers wanted to add linebackers who could stuff the run, be physical at the point of the attack, do all the things that you're being asked of. 7 tackles for Mark Robinson, the 7th-round rookie out of Ole Miss. Huge game for him, huge coming out party for him. I think he deserves a ton of credit for stepping up. TJ Watt, even though, again, not the super dominant player that he's been, or we've seen him, as a defensive MVP, but a huge sack that gets in the game for the Steelers, finishes with 4 tackles. I also think it's important to note this, and I tweeted this out late after the game. If you go back and you look at the Steelers' last 3 seasons, when TJ Watt plays 60% or more of the snaps in the game, the Steelers are 28-7. They're 1-12-1 in all other games. And again, at 28-7, you might think, oh, well, that's not this year. No, this year they're 7-2. Even when he's not playing an entire, playing at an outrageous pace, his presence on the field is boosting everyone else. That's what a part of being a leader is. That's what part of being a great player is. And that's what part of building the defense this way. This is what the Steelers done. If you look back on all the wins the last 2 years, with 8 wins this year and 9 wins last year, 17 wins, all but one of those wins. So 16 of those 17 wins came with the Steelers offense scoring 21 points or less. Or 23 points or less, excuse me. But this was, this comes from the defense finding ways to stick in there. Cam Heyward, another game where he was just setting the tone, being the flag holder out in front for the Steelers and letting the guys kind of lead the pace. I also got to give a shout out DeMarvin Leal. I told you guys at the beginning of the season that kid was going to be special. I talked about him a lot and how he's going to be a future very good Steelers defensive lineman that people love. And in this game, 3 tackles. Got a big shout out for Mike Tomlin at the podium after the game was over. But he is fitting right in. He's learning how to do it. Spent some time on injured reserve this year. Bounced back. Huge game for him. I just think the Steelers, they continue to find answers even when, they're short on resources. This was a game where, they needed to have it. They needed to find a way to bounce back against a team that whooped them up front in the trenches on both sides of the ball. The Steelers were whooped by the Ravens. This time around, they were ready for it. And they still had moments where they lost certain battles, but they won enough of them to keep themselves in the game. I think that, and then eventually for the offense to take the lead. And then at the end of the game, you saw when the quarterback had to get desperate, that's when the Steelers defense was able to kind of pin its ears back, say, hey, we're just coming after you. We're just playing our style of football. And then the interception happened. The Steelers win the game. Humongous play from the Steelers defense in the second half, only allowing 3 points. They've been dominant, and I think there's no other way to put that with the way that they've played since the bye week this year. In 2022, they've played such strong pace of play. The 2 games that they lost, they gave up 37 points to the Bengals. That was atrocious. 3 touchdowns to a backup running back. That was really bad. 16 points to the Ravens, over 200 yards on the ground. That was tough, but still only 16 points, and they knew they had to get more physical. They've now won 3 straight since then. They are now, by my count, 6-2 since the bye. It's ridiculous. And now they're sitting at 8-8. Still with a chance for the playoffs. Remember, I told you leading into this weekend, I thought the Steelers would get everything to go their way this weekend. And the biggest hurdle they had to clear was beating the Ravens. And you saw how that went down to the last second there with the touchdown that they have. And it all happened. And the dreams, the hope is still alive for this team to find a way to make it to the playoffs as the 7th seed in the AFC. We'll talk about more about that, how they've gotten there, and all the other things that they still need to happen, and how other things fell this week, and my thoughts on that in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. So don't go anywhere. We got playoff talk coming in a minute here on Locked On Steelers. But first, we've got to talk to you guys about one of our great sponsors, and of course, that's Built Bar. Built Bar is, of course, the amazing candy bar that's built, or the amazing protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And Built Bar is here to help you. If you're one of those people with New Year's resolutions, they're here to help you recover from the holidays, get back on track, and get to your goals of losing weight, eating healthier, and eating right. And that's why Built has come through in the clutch for so many people, because it's protein bars that are good for you, healthy, but actually tasty as well. And they're so delicious that you're going to think that they're not actually healthy, but they absolutely are. What makes Built Bar so good is that, for one, they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in so many ridiculous flavors that are really good. Churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut, almond, double chocolate, cookies and cream, all sorts of different flavors like that. And I don't know how they do it, but they continue to do it all the time with all those different flavors, with 100% chocolate covering them on the outside. They're amazingly healthy. They pack only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar, but with those low numbers, they still find a way to fit in 17 grams of protein so that you can get your gains. It's ridiculous. And you don't need to wait around for a box. For so many years that we've advertised for them here, we've always told you, hey, go to built.com, order this, get it delivered to your home. You don't have to do that anymore if you don't want to, because now you can get them at your local Walmart and your Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, and you can walk into the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut pucks. Or if you're going to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box of the hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. Trust me, you'll thank me later, because you tried Built Bar, by helping you stay healthy and finding tasty treats as you're getting right in the new year. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's talk about the Steelers' overall playoffs. We're going to break this game down even more tomorrow when we do our grades, so bear with me into that. But I want to take a step back and look at what the heck the Steelers have gotten themselves into with these current playoff standings. So if you remember, they were 2-7 at one point. They needed to go on a serious tear to get into playoff contention. But what did I tell you they were going to do on this show? And you can go back to those weeks when I said, as soon as they get out of the bye, they get past the Bills and the Eagles, they're going to have their chance to make their run. And here they are, making their run. 6-2, pushing for a chance to make the playoffs. Still need some things to go their way. But the things they needed this weekend, they got. Like I said, the Patriots beat the Dolphins. The Dolphins, especially when Tua went down last week. Again, not celebrating his concussion situation. That's terrible, but just an acknowledgement. I was like, that's a matchup I think that the Patriots could win. And then they did. The Dolphins on a 5-game losing streak. We'll get back to them in a minute. Then on the flip side, the Jets, their terrible quarterback situation, catching up with them. Geno Smith for the Seahawks, gets his revenge game, gets the big win. Those two things happened. Then I said the biggest hurdle to clear was the Steelers beating the Ravens. They did that. So now you need 3 more games to go your way. If you went back 3 or 4 weeks, there were like 20 things that had to go the Steelers' way. And now you're down to the last 3. So, of course, the Steelers have to beat the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns, they looked a little bit better. Deshaun Watson threw 3 touchdowns in this last game. There were still mistakes that he made. I still didn't get to watch all of that game because I was too busy watching Dolphins, Patriots. But I'll take a closer look at that as the week goes on, as we get to start to do our Steelers-Browns previews later. But the Browns may be a bit taller of a task than we thought after the way that they played the last few weeks. But still, beating the Browns, you knew that was there. The next thing you need to happen, the Patriots lose to the Bills. The Bills, we'll see what happens on Monday Night Football, but looks like they're going to be competing for the number 1 seed, and they'll need to win their last game to get that, regardless of what happens on Sunday Night Football. So you imagine Bills, probably playing to win against a Patriots team that's also desperate to make the playoffs with the win that they had this week. The last thing you need to happen is the Jets beating the Dolphins. Now, here's the thing about this. With the Jets' loss this week, they are eliminated from the playoffs. So that means that with them being eliminated from the playoffs, you could argue they don't care anymore. Robert Saleh and his team, they're going to give up. They're going to pack it in. But sometimes with division teams, you see them stick it out. You see them play tough games. You see them try to deliver one last win at the end of the season. And I think Robert Saleh is building something to make the Jets competitive in future years when they finally put some things together. But they go to play a Dolphins team. They need the Jets to now beat the Dolphins. And the Dolphins have now lost 5 straight. And Tua Tagovailoa, we don't know his status. 3 times in the concussion protocol this year. Some of with the ugly concussions that he's had. There's a lot of concern around that. Teddy Bridgewater couldn't finish the game because he took a hit. His fingers got messed up and looked like he had to get like a splint or something on his hand at the end of the game to try to keep his fingers straight. We'll see if he can play this week. If not, they're down to a 3rd-string quarterback. So now you're talking about, the Jets, Zach Wilson hasn't worked out. Mike White's kind of the guy right now, and they're figuring out that mess there. But you're talking about a Dolphins team that was built to throw the football, to work with the passing game and work with a complicated quarterback that could work with playmaker receivers. They're going to be down to a 3rd-string quarterback. Not all that hard to see the Jets with the defensive style of play that they like to win with, finding a way to win that kind of a game. Still not a given, still not a definite. The Steelers, I think by the NBC chart of probability or whatever, said the Steelers had a 17% chance to make the playoffs. But if you said that you had 17% chance about 2 weeks ago, that you take that over. I think the Steelers, when it was going into the Raiders game, I think NFL Network or whoever had that game for that night gave them a 0.5% chance just last week to make the playoffs with all the things that needed to happen. And here they are with just needing 3 things, one of them being in their control to happen. And I think it speaks a lot to, again, the culture that the Steelers have wanted to maintain, have wanted to establish this year. This year was never about winning the Super Bowl. It was never about getting far in the playoffs. It was about finding an identity on offense, finding what you got in Kenny Pickett, finding the future in your team and building leaders and building experiences that could be kind of learning points where your guys can learn back and think like, hey, 4 or 5 years ago or however many years ago, these guys stick with the team. We remember when we were playing the Raiders and the Ravens, we had to have those games and we didn't know what exactly kind of a game style that we wanted to play because we were still developing. Now we do know what that's like and we know how to be there. That kind of stuff builds winners. It builds leaders. It builds champions. And I think that's what the Steelers ultimately needed this year. We also talked about how the biggest thing that you wanted to see this year was developing Kenny Pickett. Sure, he's not going to throw for 300 yards, especially in this offense, and especially when he's only asked to throw it 27 times in a game when you're running the ball like crazy on one of the best run defenses in the NFL. But him coming up in the clutch, staying focused, making plays late in the game to stay in the moment. That's what the Steelers wanted to see out of him, and you're seeing that growth. And I want to remind everyone, next week, you get the Colts and the Texans, and then you get the Bears playing the Packers. The Packers need to win their game, so they're going to be going all out. The Bears have been struggling. I fully expect the Packers to win that game. The Colts have been reeling. The Texans didn't exactly look good this week either. But if the Texans find a way to upset the Colts, the Steelers will have the 32nd overall pick because they have the Bears' 2nd-round pick, their natural 2nd-round pick, and the Bears would jump into the 1st overall pick for the draft if they lose and the Texans win, and that would give the Steelers the 32nd pick because remember, the Dolphins' 1st-round pick was forfeited for their scandal that they got caught up in, which means the 1st round only has 31 picks instead of 32. Therefore, the Bears being 1st overall would have the 32nd pick, which would give that to the Steelers because of the Chase Claypool trade. There is a chance, and I'd even say a good chance, that the Steelers could find a way to get 2 picks in the top 32 picks of this NFL draft and make the playoffs. That's having your cake and eat it too. If you had told me that this would be happening back when they made the Chase Claypool trade, I'd have said you're drunk. But They're still here. They're still fighting. I think it's a testament to Mike Tomlin's team, his culture, the organization. And it's the stuff that I say a lot about this team, the organizational integrity to be able to keep supporting your team, keep helping them find ways to win, to build towards the winning culture that you want to still be there when Cam Heyward does retire. I think you're seeing leaders like, we knew about TJ Watt. We were getting to know more about Minkah Fitzpatrick, but now you're seeing a Najee Harris against the Ravens, your vaunted rival in the big game, not only staying focused, but looking hungry, running angry, and making plays, and then not doing dumb things after those plays to get your team in trouble. Then you see Kenny Pickett staying focused, making the plays. George Pickens had some rough moments, lost a one-on-one in the end zone that I thought he could have came down with, stepped out of bounds on a third down conversion that could have kept a key drive alive, but comes up with a ridiculous catch over the middle that converts a 3rd and long. And again, Pat Freiermuth coming up big. I thought there were some really important moments. Gunnar Olszewski, he hasn't done a whole lot this year, but on the Jaylen Warren jet sweep that he had, Gunnar Olszewski took out 2 defenders with 1 block. I saw it live, and I was like, that was spectacular. Everybody is trying to chip in to find ways to win. Again, Steven Sims even caught a big pass over the middle. And I think that speaks a lot to how this young team is forming. Again, Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, Kenny Pickett, Pat Freiermuth, George Pickens, all these guys, they're finding ways to come together in the big moments. They're all 24 and younger, 25 and younger for some. I think Deontay Johnson, even though he got paid this year, this is still his 4th year in the NFL. This is a group that's still figuring out how to win together, how to play together. And in doing so, they're learning with wins. You're supposed to be learning with losses at this stage. There's so many teams that would have folded at this point, but not the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think that's a huge testament to the potential of this team in the coming years and what the Steelers could be, have done to draft guys who are going to be leaders. Because it's not just that Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, these guys are talented guys. I think it's the character that they bring to the locker room. They wanted guys who could be flag bearers, the same way Cam Heyward carried the Franco Harris flag out on the field before the Raiders game to honor the Steelers legend Franco Harris just days after he passed, is the same way that Cam Heyward's always carried the Steelers flag, being Mr. Steeler, being the kind of team representative that's, great on the football field, but great off the football field as well. They needed more guys who could play and act like that and carry themselves like that in and out of the locker room. And I think that right now you're seeing Kenny Pickett and Najee Harris learn how to be that late in the season. So huge. This is why you don't tank, because you want to develop those type of leaders and then still do a great job in your front office, scout your guys, and make your moves in the offseason to get the player talents to add to the core that you've already built. Steelers fans, it's a heck of a victory Monday. You have a lot to celebrate this week. You have a lot to be excited about. It's going to be exciting to watch, potential chance at a playoff berth kind of football this upcoming weekend. We'll see the full schedule. We don't have the full schedule yet because the NFL has to assign the dates and times. Well, the times, because they will all be Sunday, but the NFL still has to schedule all the times for the Week 18 games, so we know when Steelers Browns is and all the other games they have to pay attention to. But either way, it's just exciting to have another week talking about the potential of this team overcoming the odds, finishing with a winning record this season, and getting to the playoffs. It's going to be a wild one. Thanks so much for hanging with me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Sorry this show got up so late at night. Here it was just a late night covering the game. I was there doing the pregame, postgame, and the final word for Channel 11. If you watched me there, thanks for watching me there and here. Appreciate the people at Channel 11, Albie Oxenrider, Dina Pietro, Jenna Harner, all the great people that work there to do what they do and to invite me on to do that stuff. I have a great time with those people, and I love working with Channel 11. So thanks to them, and thanks to all of you for checking me out. Happy New Year, everybody. Forgot to say that at the top of the show. Jesus, is how crazy of a night it was. But again, I'll be back on the Tuesday episode with our Stars and Skulls grades. We'll talk about what Steelers did the best, what Steelers didn't, and we'll be breaking things down, looking at how the Steelers need to keep carrying forward and get ready for another huge game at home against the Cleveland Browns. It'll be a wild one. Don't go anywhere. Stay here with the Locked On Steelers podcast that you can find on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and especially on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes. And if If you want to help out the show even further, go on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment. Do both at the same time. You get a special shout out at the end of the show. Again, Happy New Year, everybody. New Year, everybody. We will be back Tuesday with our grades episode right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.